I believe your children are my future. Now, that's a message from one defender of President Barack Obama's Common Core public school curriculum at a liberal think tank just the other day. Now, my message to former Massachusetts Secretary of Education Paul Reville is somewhat simpler, but it can't be repeated on a family-friendly network. So let's bring on Scott Ott and Bill Whittle to see if they can improve on my vocabulary score on this one. Welcome, gents, and let's get to the clip of Reville speaking at the Center for American Progress. Here goes.
This is something, as Toby said, that makes sense. I mean, again, the argument about where it came from, I think, privileges certain sort of fringe voices about federalism and states' rights and things of that nature, when really what we're doing at the national level here now, state by state, is what a lot of our states thought made sense individually. Why should some towns or cities in states have no standards or low standards, and others have extremely high standards, when the children belong to all of us and would move?
The children belong to all of us. I should mention that the Center for American Progress was founded by John Podesta, who is an old Clinton hand and is currently working for President Obama in the White House. Scott, you're a dad, and I believe you're a homeschooler too, so Common Core doesn't have any direct effect on you and your family. So leaving that aside, how do you respond to this claim that your children belong to me, to Paul Reville, and even to Woody Allen?
Well, I think it's patently true, or at least that's what the folks in the public school system believe. And by the way, just to be clear, we did homeschool for a year or so way back, but our children go to public schools now. And so we get to experience the joy of government-run, taxpayer-funded education. You know, I used to work in a public school system, too. A lot of fine people working there. But there was this kind of, I don't know, this assumption in the administration building, at least, among the more well-educated people, that the children would be a lot better off if it weren't for their darn parents. And that it was really the parents that were getting in the way of their kids growing up properly and knowing the things that they should know in the way that they should know them.
Darn those parents. They're the new guys on this child rearing scene. I don't know who they think they are. Bill, there's a lot of language here about accountability and high standards, but what happens to standards? What happens to accountability when children belong to everyone and no one?
Same thing that happens to the community cow, right? In a communist collective, when the cow is sick at 4 o'clock in the morning and it's freezing cold outside, nobody goes out and takes care of it because it doesn't belong to anybody. I did an event in St. Louis last weekend about Common Core, an educational summit about Common Core. And the guy who spoke before me was a Common Core expert, and he basically just said the entire curriculum's just junk and everybody knows it. What it really is, Steve, and everybody, I opened my remarks by saying it. Let's just cut to the chase here. This is the goal of the progressives, to indoctrinate your children with their ideology from kindergarten. And this is how progressives have always worked. This is the only way you can make a square peg fit into a round hole, is to start hammering at it when it's 4 years old and never, ever, ever, ever stop. Common Core is like the Balrog in that first Lord of the Rings thing, where you just think that this entire thing is defeated. You've pulled your children out of public schools, you've gotten them away from this indoctrination, you've got them into charter schools, and just as this thing's falling into the pit, it sends that whip and grabs you by the ankle, pulls you back in. Scott, we were talking earlier about homeschooling. Very soon, you will not, I guarantee you, you will not be legally allowed to homeschool your children unless your curriculum conforms to Common Core. They will follow you and they will indoctrinate you, and they're never going to stop.
You know, Bill, I'm so glad you brought up indoctrination, because, you know, there's a long chain of thought here going all the way back to the early 20th century. I'll give you a quote here. "Give me 4 years to teach the children, and the seed I have sown will never be uprooted." That was Vladimir Lenin expressing his view on the importance of centralizing education into one hand. And he meant it too. He was out to breed what he called the new Soviet man, and not coincidentally, millions of Soviets died in death camps. Now, a decade or two later, a funny-looking Austrian guy started the Hitler Youth, which also didn't end well for anyone involved. Now, I don't believe for one second that Paul Reville wants death camps or to invade Poland or any of that stuff. But this premise that my children that my sons belong to him or anyone other than my wife and myself, that premise is essentially totalitarian, no matter what nice language you dress it up in. Might not mean death camps, but giving one city, one political party really, control over education eventually it means the death of liberty. For Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, I'm Steve Green, and those are my kids.